The All-Star break is officially in the books. We gear up for a big second half for the Minnesota Wild today on Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. And just as a reminder, Locked On Wild is free. Locked On Wild is available wherever you listen to podcasts. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we recap the All-Star break, take a look at some of the things that happened with both Kirill Kaprizov and Cam Talbot over the weekend, and MVP honors for a Wild trade target. So we'll talk about all that. We'll set the scene for the second half of the season with some keys to the second half, as well as looking at the February schedule. So a lot to get into today's episode, which is brought to you, by the way, by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. My name is Seth, host of Locked On Wild, veteran Minnesota sports content producer, captain of Locked On Wild, and happy to have you along for a Monday edition of the show. All-Star Game is history, and so we bring in Alex Micheletti for another Micheletti Monday to talk about that plus more. Alex, what's happening?
Not too much. Another exciting weekend, and we saw a lot happen, and we had our two Wild guys, contribute mightily to the entire weekend, and fun to see Kirill, dressed up as his fellow countrymate, Alex Ovechkin, had everything down that Ovi does, and even shot right-handed, which was crazy, and so. Yeah, it was pretty cool, and Cam was great all weekend too, and made some huge saves to even get his squad to the final, and so really good showing of the league for sure this weekend.
One of the first things is that Kirill gave, I think, a lot of Wild fans a little bit of a heart attack by putting on the Ovechkin Capitals jersey. So I saw that and I was like,
lots of Russians there already.
And then the Capitals Twitter account asking the Wild's Twitter account if they could borrow him. And a lot of people were like, no. It was fun to see Kirill in action in his first All-Star game because he definitely didn't disappoint. Not that we thought he would. Right. But he brought a lot of flash to the game, and honestly, one of the highlights of the weekend was him and Cam Talbot with the mini microphone.
So funny! I laugh at it every single time. It's just so funny. Whoever came up with that bit, just brilliant. So it provides a lot of comic relief for sure.
I wanted to ask you because, and this might be a name that I hadn't done a lot of homework on, but Joe Pavelski had himself a nice weekend as well, and with Dallas kind of starting to fall out of the race, maybe a target that the Wild should take a look at.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure you've been following my Twitter feed, but yeah, that's been my number one target. I just think he might be easier to get than Claude Giroux. But I almost wanted them to acquire one of the two to just block them from going to Colorado, which doesn't need any more. Please, they don't need any more offensive firepower. So, but I think Pavelski might cost a little bit less than Giroux might, just because Giroux is a little bit younger, but. Kirill looked great with Pavelski. He set him up for a nice goal. I don't think they'd be line mates, but they would imagine Pavelski on that top power play with Kirill and Zuccarello feeding him passes. I mean, that would be really, really fun to watch. And he's still getting it done at 37. He's not. He grew up not too far from Minnesota, right there in Wisconsin, so in Plover. So yeah, I mean, I'd be all for it. And I know they've tried to sign him in the past when he was a free agent, and he just chose Dallas, over them. But look at the Wild. I mean, if he wants to win a cup, that's a team that's close and just needs a little bit more help.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to just kind of finish up the All-Star game discussion. What did you think of I think you watched it more than I did. I was running some errands over the weekend in various spots, so I was in the car a lot. And it sounded like they had a lot of the skills competition set up outside. Setup wise, and just kind of going through the weekend's events, how did the NHL do?
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Of course, the breakaway challenge was the biggest hit, and you had Trevor Zegras, scoring blindfolded, which was incredible. Pietrangelo won the contest without even getting a shot off. John Hamm gave him the win basically because of the Blues winning the cup a few years ago, and John Hamm being a Blues fan and Pietrangelo now being in Vegas. So that was
shocker.
That was crazy. Because Kirill had a nice goal, and even DeBrincat dressed up as the Hangover character too. It's Galifianakis. So that was just phenomenal. The outdoor events are really cool too. I thought doing it, by the Bellagio Hotel makes for a really cool background. And Connor McDavid not getting the fastest skater blew everybody away. Of course, it was Jordan Kyrou who just looks like he's going to turn into a budding star in this league. He always kills the Wild. The league with their events, they always do it up. They do not, every expense that is needed, they do it to the nines, and that's one of the good things that the league is known for is with their big events, they do it up big.
Yeah, they definitely do not spare any expense. Gary Bettman just says, "Hey, blank check, whatever we need, let's make it happen."
And you got the wacko Machine Gun Kelly performing, and just it's entertaining for sure.
Yeah, we're I like Machine Gun Kelly, but I'm not even gonna touch that. So yeah, it was a fun weekend, and it sounded like Talbot and Kaprizov had a lot of fun, and so now we can gear up for what should be a very, very busy second half of the season. We'll start that conversation by kind of looking at some keys to the second half. More of that conversation with Alex Micheletti coming up next here on Locked On Wild. It is the time of year where you have pretty much given up on all of your New Year's resolutions. You stuck it out for a month, but things kind of started to go stale. And so now it's time to go back to the drawing board. But if you are looking to eat a little better and look a little better, Built Bar is right here to help. But have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors, including yummy cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, all delicious. They're going to be your new favorite. Puffs included are also covered in 100% real chocolate. They are low calorie, high protein. You can replace any of your favorite candy bars with Built Bars and Built Bar Puffs. Most contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. So don't delay. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. It is Super Week, brought to you by Get Upside, and there's no better place to get coverage of the big game than the Locked On NFL podcast. Locked On Bengals and Locked On Rams are in LA all week, leading you up to the big game. Continuing our chat with Alex Micheletti on today's episode of Locked On Wild, Micheletti Monday hashtag, and Alex, second half starting up for the Minnesota Wild. Obviously, a few things that are keys to the second half and to the Wild performing at the same level that they did through most of the first half. So I have a couple that I have kind of put in my head as hugely important to this team's success. Anything in particular for you that stands out as a key to the Wild keeping it rolling here once the schedule resumes?
Yeah, to me, I think it's that Foligno-Greenway and Ek line, continuing to dominate. They change games. The way, it kind of stinks. I was, watching the press conferences at the All-Star games, and Connor McDavid was kind of saying that when the Oilers were struggling there for a bit and they kind of turned it on late, that sometimes breaks come at the worst time when teams are rolling. So I think what's going to be important for this team is making sure that line continues to play how it was, and now with Greenway playing with confidence, it just makes things so much different when he's contributing to the offense. That helps so much, and they just wear teams out, and that's so important for how this team goes. And then also continuing to make strides with that Fiala Boldy line, which has just been incredible. If Gaudreau can just hold it together, that makes that second we call it scoring line. Just do wonders for this Wild offense for sure.
A couple of the ones, and you hit it right on the head. I think Freddy Gaudreau solves a couple of issues because this has been talked about a lot, so I'm not going to super rehash it, but definitely more of a defense oriented guy as the center for that line. But if he can contribute and add some offensive firepower to that line, that puts less pressure on Bill Guerin to have to go out and make a move, because if that line gets to where it's like you can't break those guys up. If that ends up being the case with those three, then maybe Guerin says, you know what?
Stay put.
We don't really have to do anything with it. So that was definitely one of the ones on my list, was just Freddy Gaudreau's play is going to, I think, single-handedly, with the exception of a major injury, his play, I think, is single-handedly going to determine whether or not this team does anything at the trade deadline, which, for those keeping track, and I definitely am, March 21st is the trade deadline for the NHL. So we've got a month and change for the Wild to kind of take a look and see how things are going and make a determination beyond that. The other big one for me is the goalie splits.
Mm-hmm.
Both guys have been playing rather well going into the All-Star break, and obviously Talbot had the shutout in the final game before the break, so I would imagine he'll probably get the first start in Winnipeg out of the break because, hot hand. But if this team's going to be successful, they're going to need to really approach the month of February not relying on one guy. I mean, you have enough games to where you got to get both of them in there, because this has been one of the big issues for the Wild in their history, is coming out of the All-Star break, taking the one goalie, whether it be Devan Dubnyk or whoever else, taking the one guy and saying you're getting 90% of the starts. If they do that this year, there's going to be a problem.
I mean, we've seen it. Cam's had a couple of injuries, and so, I mean, we have to, have to have him, be healthy come playoff time because, if Cam's banged up, this team can't go far. He's so crucial. We saw it in the playoffs last year against Vegas. He single-handedly, kept the Wild in a couple of the games, and so. And with Kaapo's emergence here, it allows you to make it more of a 50-50 split opposed to like 60-40 or 70-30.
Right. And, if you feel like Cam is the number one guy, which I think based off of what he did last year and what he's done at points this year, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like you said, like, let's get closer to like 55-45
Right.
or 50-50 or maybe 60-40 and not any higher than that, because then you get people that get worn down and then they break. Goalies, they break. And
Right.
then you have the Devin Dubnyk of 2 years ago where he just lets everything in. We don't need that.
No.
Like, keep them fresh. Keep everybody on track.
Right.
And speaking of that, that's the other big one for me in the second half here, is making sure that with the amount of games that are going to be played, making sure that what is the term that load management?
Yes.
Making sure that we don't get people that are too worn down by playing all the time. Take advantage of rest days.
Yeah.
I know the roster is not going to be super conducive to that, but any opportunity you can get to give guys a little bit of a breather, they got to take it.
Yeah, and pick your spots. I mean, with Kaapo, play him against an Ottawa. Play him against when you're playing against a team that's on a back-to-back. Find chances where it can make things easier for Kaapo too. Don't throw him to the fire against a team like Edmonton, one of a highly skilled team. But he also has shown that he has beaten some pretty good teams too. But pick and choose your battles for sure when you're going to play them. Another crucial thing is they're going to have to execute on special teams and get that power play rocking. And I think having a 100% healthy Jared Spurgeon is so key too, because he can help out that power play by being the quarterback back there.
Yeah, and the power play has been better. The penalty kill just goes in waves.
Right.
It seems like they get back on track and then they give up a power play goal in consecutive games.
Yeah.
It's really hard to tell with the penalty kill too. I think that's a spot where you can go like 0 for 1.
Right.
But let's say you gave that goal up with 2 seconds left. Like that happened the other night where the Wilds gave, and that was against Colorado.
Yes. Yeah.
Where the power play for Colorado had lapsed, but the Avalanche scored immediately after.
Right.
So like it's all situational. Like,
yes,
you can have a good night on the penalty kill. You can have a night where you look really good on the penalty kill. You just get unlucky. It's just a matter of kind of shoring that up, but not at the sake of dominant 5-on-5. Like, keep that going.
Right.
Keep that rolling.
No doubt.
And like 30 empty net goals the rest of the season too. I'm fine with that. Whatever we need.
Yeah, Dean Blaze is the biggest Wild fan when they're pulling the goalie for sure.
Then the other, just to wrap up on Bill Guerin, how aggressively he plays the trade deadline is a huge factor too. Like, is he going to want to make a move for this team? Is it going to be a minor upgrade, a rental? does he swing for the fences and try to get something big in here that nobody expects? Like how does the Bill Guerin trade deadline look? That's another big key for this team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We have some division rivals that could really force his hand. But you also have a lot of Wild fans that are scarred for life with the Martin Hansel, center trade, because for whatever reason, it always seems like the Wild need a center come trade deadline. Wes Walls was on my dad's podcast earlier this week, or I guess early last week, on Beyond the Pod, and he talked about how some of his teams, they were just needing a center, and the management never ended up making a trade. So I think Billy G has a really good pulse on this team, and he also has Marco Rossi up his sleeve if he needs a center. That's what people are forgetting in all these trade talks is they think that Marco was playing bad and when he was up here, but that's totally not the case. And he's shown in Iowa, that goal he had against Rockford, that was incredible. He's like a point per game down there. So I think Marco's doing just fine. And if it is, them trying to wait to hold the contract, that's understandable. But if they need him for the playoffs, call the young Austrian up and let him do his thing.
Yeah, I have a feeling that that phone call may be like Guerin might have that number ready to rock, depending on how things play out here as the second half of the season gets underway. Now, busy month of February, including the Great Canada road trip. We'll lay the groundwork for the month of February to finish off today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right up to the big game this weekend. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, the NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season, including a nice little crossover between the NHL and the Super Bowl. Total goals in the NHL on February 13th is the current favorite at -140. Compared to first half total points in the Super Bowl, which is +110. So if you like those odds, head to betonline.net, where the game starts. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. Seth Topol joined by Alex Micheletti. And Alex, the Great Canada road trip hits not once, but twice. We get 2 games against Winnipeg. We get an Edmonton. We get an Ottawa, a Toronto, a Calgary, another Calgary. The second Calgary is technically in March. But a very interesting swing of games for the Wild here in the month of February. Winnipeg, not great, but on the road, still a dangerous team. We get a chance to see Carolina and Florida at home, Detroit, and then at Edmonton, at Ottawa, at Toronto, at Calgary. Which is the more difficult part of the month, do you think? Is it those first few games, or is it that 4-game road swing to finish the month off against the rest of the Canada teams?
Yeah, I think it's the first. It's you're getting back into the swing of things, and so it can. Sometimes it can be tough to get in a rhythm. And so, Winnipeg is an interesting team. They, like you said, they aren't very great, but they have some offensive firepower that scares you. And the games always seem to be super high scoring for whatever reason. Kyle Connor always seems to just terrorize Wild goaltending. And so you really need to get off to a good start with those guys. Yeah, I don't know. Calgary kind of scares me too. Johnny Gaudreau is having one heck of a season, and Markstrom's been a phenomenal goaltender all season too. So it's going to be interesting. And Winnipeg, Edmonton is playing pretty well too. So now, so we'll see.
The Evander Kane connection, yeah. As you mentioned, Winnipeg, I can't help but look at Connor Hellebuck's numbers, and he sits. And I know win-loss record is not, the end-all be-all, but 14, 15, and 6. He's got a goals against average of 2.9 and a save percentage of 910, which in Hellebuck terms is a terrible season for him.
Not what we're used to. And he was supposed to, he was quote unquote going to maybe be the starting Olympic goalie for Team USA. So, definitely not the season that they were, expecting. That team has never really replaced Dustin Byfuglien. But they, for whatever reason, he's also just letting in goals. That's not what we're used to from him. It's interesting. And they let go, or Paul Maurice, resigned. And so that was interesting because I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. And so I hope he gets another shot, but really, really strange vibes from that team.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because, that is such a weird thing because he wasn't prompted to do it.
No,
he just went with the angle of, it's time for this team to get a new voice. And like you said, really successful coach, just for whatever reason got to and maybe he felt like he had gotten the best out of this team and just was like, I got to kind of set myself up for an opportunity to get something better in the off season. But yeah, just a bizarre vibe around the Jets this season. And for those wondering, Hellebuck's goals against average last year, 2.58. The year before that, 2.57. His career is 2.66. So raising the roof a little bit on the Hellebuck stats. But I have a little bit of a hot take to kind of wind it down here today. I think the Wild, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. You ready for this?
Yep.
7-2 in the month of February.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, the way they were playing right before break, they were beating everybody. They had no fear, and making comebacks left and right. The Rangers game was absolutely incredible. To make that comeback on a banner night or Jersey night, and so if they played the way right before the All-Star break, I think they can do it. And I'm expecting a lot of those Canadian type games. There's not going to be fans in the stands or limited fans. So it's going to be interesting. They're going to have to create their own energy, and so it's going to be interesting to watch on TV with no fans again. And so hopefully they can get up through the border okay, and none of the games get canceled or postponed again. And so,
right.
But yeah, I think that can also sometimes help a team too, because you don't have to worry about crazy opponent fan bases, and maybe it can help on the power play too, and in penalty kill. And so yeah, it's gonna be an interesting month of February for sure.
Yes, it will. And I'm saving a spicier take for March. Just gonna plant that seed.
We like those Topol hot takes.
Yeah, just gonna leave that one there. But if 7-2 is medium well for the month of February, my my take for March is super rare. Like just a light sear on both sides and ready to rock. So that I think that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. So as always, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. And now that your first listen of the day is done, make sure you flip over to the Locked On NHL podcast, where you can hear Locked On NHL experts with all the latest news on their teams in 30 minutes or less. Locked On Wild is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Just like Locked On Wild, we're available wherever you listen. Make sure to leave a 5-star review. You can do so on Apple Podcasts. You can do so on Spotify now, too. So if you have yet to, make sure to give that a go as well. Also, make sure to keep up the engagement on our social media channels. YouTube has been going crazy. So let's
love to see it.
Yes, let's get some conversations going in the comments on this video, on every video that we have going on the rest of the week. Love to interact with the listeners, so let's keep it going. If a puck drops in the state of hockey, Locked On Wild, of course, has you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday as parts of the Locked On Podcast Network.